from Burrillville residents Terry Lacey, Invenergy, Jason Ecosse, Jeremy Bailey, and Deborah Hovanski regarding the request related to negotiations with Invenergy regarding a tax treaty and the provisions of a proposed treaty.
Motion to open.
Second.
Motion to open, the second, all in favor?
Aye.
Mr. President, if I may,
Yep.
before we begin,
Yep.
by law, under the Open Meetings Law, we have certain responsibility and obligation to consider certain items in public, I'm sorry, in private rather than in public. I know a lot of people want to discuss a proposed tax treaty. I want them to know that the council has not even been informed of what's been going on. We have a special counsel that's working on it along with me and the town manager. And that item is on the agenda for executive session. We're presenting it to the council. The council has not yet been even informed as to what's going on. So this is not a negotiation between private businesses that are thinking of locating here. It's not something that's open to the public. It should be, it does remain private.
Excuse me. I don't believe that I'm going to ask anything to divulge anything. I'm just going to, well, someone is going to represent us. It's, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I got this.
I'm sorry. Terry Lacey, still on Downtown Road. I believe what we're going to be asking is more like explaining, and rather than divulging information.
I just want you to know that even the council hasn't been told what's going on yet. We're about to tell them tonight, at least where we stand.
In executive session?
They don't even know yet. We're about to explain to them as to where we stand.
You have a process question though? You have a process question?
No, I'm going to let Jason speak.
Thank you. Andrew Vanderbilt, Harrisville, Rhode Island. I'd like to read a letter that I wrote to President Pacheco. Dear President Pacheco, the following is part of the Town of Burrillville's noise ordinance adopted in 2001. I believe these words clearly illustrate how our residents feel about the quality of life in our town and how we want that quality to be protected by our elected officials. Quote, each person has the right to an environment reasonably free from noise which jeopardizes health or welfare or unnecessarily degrades the quality of life. Quote, it is the declared policy of the town to promote an environment free from excessive noise, otherwise properly called noise pollution, which unnecessarily jeopardizes the public health, safety, and welfare and degrades the quality of the lives of the residents of this community. I have made the following observations about some of the promises and actions of the energy generating facilities located in the town that have occurred throughout the past 20+ years. The actions or inactions of past town councils have, in many instances, adversely affected town residents in so many different ways, not just sound pollution. The time to think about the way we envision our town to be if Invenergy is granted the right to operate its facility in the town is now, during the planning process, and not later after the plant is in operation. Ocean State Power Facility. When the Ocean State Power Facility was proposed back in the late 1980s, it was proposed as a facility with a 20-year life expectancy. After its usefulness as a power generating facility was complete, the area would be returned to its former natural surroundings. While the plant was in operation, the town of Burrillville would receive tax compensations to alleviate its tax burdens. The length of the project was projected at 20 years, which would have ended in 2011. There was a clause in the treaty that allowed tax compensations to be renewed, but it was expected that by 2011, the plant would be updated and replaced with more modern energy generating facilities, since the cost to keep Ocean State Power running would be prohibitive. Ocean State Power promised to operate the facility at sound levels not exceeding 43 dBA. Any water needed to operate the facility would come from the Blackstone River in Woonsocket and piped to the plant. The level of the Blackstone River would be monitored to ensure that excessive amounts of water would not be taken. The town of Burrillville's water supplies would not be affected this way. All of the wastewater from the plant would be discharged through steam, and our surrounding environment would be minimally impacted while the plant was in operation. By the mid-1990s, it was determined that the plant was not getting enough water from the Blackstone River to operate and needed to expand by adding a pond to store water to be used when levels were low. There was a brief time when water was trucked to the pond in hundreds of trucks to allow the plant to remain in operation. Water was taken from many surrounding ponds and lakes, which were much depleted during this time period. The facility has also spilled chemicals multiple times outside the plant that created toxic gases that were released into the environment. People in nearby homes needed to be evacuated, and some were sickened by these harmful fumes. Sound levels were measured at nearby residences in the early 2000s that were deemed in excess of 65 dBA, more than 46% higher than originally promised. At the last town council meeting on April 16, 2016, it was announced that legal costs in matters associated with Ocean State Power was substantial. Since there was no agreement between the town of Burrillville and Ocean State Power to keep sound levels beyond the confines of the facility below 43 dBA, the facility was allowed to operate at the federally mandated sound level of 55 dBA, negating the power plant's original promise of 43 dBA. The quality of life of many Burrillville residents has been adversely affected by having this Ocean State Power in operation. The Spectra Algonquin Compressor Station. When the Spectra Algonquin Compressor Station was proposed, station officials promised the town that sound levels would not exceed 45 dBA. Unfortunately, the station does not operate at this level, but operates at a higher level of 50 dBA, according to Invenergy's sound study that was available for review at the informational meeting held at the middle school last fall. Excessively loud sound levels emanating from the facility were a major concern when the facility was proposed due to Ocean State Power's lack of compliance. When the compressor station was proposed, the excessively loud sound levels at Ocean State Power were deemed as intolerable, but no additional action was taken by the town council to have a signed sound level agreement between the compressor station and the town. There is no timetable for the compressor station as to its life expectancy, nor any funds promised to be set aside to restore the facility to its natural surroundings after the station is no longer in use. It can only be assumed that the station can remain in operation as long as its owners want it in operation and have no obligation to restore the surroundings to what they were before operation. With a track record such as this, with past energy producing facilities, I believe that this town council should not and cannot rely on proposed environmental impact levels set forth by the Invenergy Corporation to be any different. In conjunction with the tax treaty that is currently being negotiated, this council must also include provisions for environmental impact to the town and its residents, both current and future. If Invenergy is not able to comply with their own promises, harsh penalties must be imposed to ensure no resident is ever harmed by their negligence. Sound levels, water levels, air quality, discharge to and from the sewage plant, water tables, duration of operation, and returning the area to its former natural surroundings for the town and future residents, and also for our neighbors in surrounding towns, also all need to be considered. No amount of money from any company is ever worth the health and well-being of any resident of this town or any other town, past, present, and future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Jason Ecosse, and Jeremy Bailey, still Walmart Road. So we have, I think, about 4 or 5 questions directly related to the tax treaty. You very well may repeat some of the information that you just shared when you opened. That's fine. I think we need to learn more, and we need to ask anyway. So, number 1, we understand that the Rhode Island law 44-3-30, Burrillville property taxation of electricity generating facilities located in the town, gives the town the legal authority and the responsibility for negotiating tax in energy producing facilities. Do you know when the current version of that law was passed that gave you the authority for that?
I think I'm the one that sent that citation to
Yes.
Mr. Bailey. I just didn't check the history of it.
Okay.
Last citation of the law, I believe, is 2010. If you look at the law itself, the last time it's referenced a date was 2010.
Great.
Down the little bottom, you'll see at the end of the law.
Got it right there?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So, who specifically is negotiating the tax treaty and/or pilot? Let's make sure we include that as well in case things go that way.
That would be myself, manager, and special assistant, Mr. McAvoy.
Okay. Thank you very much. If you were granted permission to do that, when was it done? Why was it done? And who approved that?
I can't answer those specific questions. I got involved maybe just 4 months ago, roughly. I believe Mr. McAvoy was involved sooner. Just can't give you the answers.
Okay, so Mr. McElroy was involved sooner
I was
at the
hired in the
behest of
summer.
the...
I was
Okay.
hired in the summer of 2015.
And was there a motion passed that authorized that?
Mr. McAvoy was hired approximately 5 or 6 years ago to represent the town with respect to the lawsuits that were pending with Ocean State Power. And in the process of dealing with those lawsuits, and I believe there were like 5 or 6 of them altogether, Mr. McAvoy transitioned into this.
He's appointed as assistant solicitor when town council was reorganized. Part of that process, we appointed Mr. Nicolation, and we appointed Mr. McElroy as an assistant solicitor, which means he becomes part of the staff. So he wasn't necessarily hired just to work on this particular thing.
So to answer your question, maybe to help, I authorized Mr. McAvoy to act on my behalf.
Okay, so there was no motion, no authorization specifically that needed to occur to allow you to enter into any negotiations with the company for tax treaty pilot purposes?
Not that I'm aware of.
And none was needed?
That's correct.
Okay. How much money has been spent to date on all the legal services from Mr. McElroy and others related to having to negotiate this?
First of all, I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
Second, it's not a public record. It's exempt from public disclosure.
Okay, and we'll get there. And could you explain to us why it's exempt?
Why? I can cite the law to you, maybe not off the top of my head, but I'll email it to you tomorrow if you like. There's a specific exemption to access to public records law that deals with negotiations of this type as to how much money is spent, who's doing the negotiations, until it's actually concluded.
Okay, and
Once
that's,
it's concluded, it becomes public.
and that's a state law.
Yes.
And we have the town of Burrillville, the citizens of Burrillville, the ones that will be affected, the ones that will ultimately deal with this, have zero visibility throughout any of the negotiations to any of the information that happens at that time.
That's correct, yes.
Basically, and no.
It's transparency at its finest.
That is certainly unfortunate. I said that is certainly unfortunate. I'll move on to 2, 3, 4. Did you have anything else for one? Okay. So what specifically are the benefits of a tax treaty and/or pilot for the proposed power plant in Burrillville versus having the power plant on the tax rolls should the power plant ultimately be approved? We've heard it a number of times, there's benefit to that over it being on the tax rolls. I think stating that is one thing, explaining that is another.
As a matter of fact, we're prepared to answer that question, but to the council. In fact, we'll be speaking of that tonight at the executive session. It's, once again, it's not something you discuss publicly when you're negotiating with somebody as to what the benefits or the cons are, pro and con versus entering or not entering into an agreement. We definitely will discuss it in private, but we're not going to do it in public for the other side to know.
And what are the laws governing doing that in private versus sharing that in public?
Well, it's called the Access to Public Records Law.
Same one? That's what allows you to go into executive session and for us to have no visibility to what's discussed there.
I'll be glad to set it up.
It's the open meetings law as well.
Thank you. We're newbies to town government, clearly.
We don't want you to get the wrong impression and take the message out again the wrong way. So there are a number of different things that apply.
Great. To hear, do you have any?
No.
Okay. So, the same question very well may be the same. The answer very well may be the same. Tom wants to know, how can we be assured, should the power plant be built, if we have no visibility to any of the information, or discussions, or negotiations, that we in fact are getting the best tax deal? We've certainly seen from other scenarios where potential money was left on the table, both in our state and in other states. I think we've all read the news articles about what's happening even down in Providence right now, and know that they feel like they have been underpaid potentially. Ironic that I read about that in the paper and all of those details. I'd like to know, how we can be assured that we're going to get the best deal.
Even the council hasn't been yet brought up to discussion.
Not yet, right?
What's going on, so I can't give you that answer. You just don't negotiate in public. You don't-
So we cannot be assured that we'll get the best deal.
Well, hopefully you trust your council members to do that.
I would say you're asking a lot for the citizens to take on faith. And it's not a personal issue at all. And that's unfortunate, but I'll get to that in a second. So under whose recommendation and exactly what is the basis for the recommendation that the town council remain neutral during these negotiations? I've never heard of needing to maintain such a position for negotiating. Frankly, that's an interesting position to take.
That's not the item that's on the agenda, right?
For the tax treaty, yes, same item. Remaining neutral for the purposes of negotiating a tax treaty.
Well, it's not that they're neutral, they're not informed yet as to where the negotiations stand. It's not that they're neutral, they're just informed.
Well, we were informed that the town council needed to remain neutral for the purposes of these negotiations.
That's written from your...
It's okay, you can tell it to me like I'm a 5-year-old.
It was I that advised the council to stay neutral, but not with respect to tax negotiation. It was with respect to not influencing the planning board and the zoning board and their duties that they have to do. They are going to be, as I just mentioned earlier, they're going to be hearing a lot of testimony, they're going to be asking questions, they'll be making decisions. That's the same board that this council appoints. We don't want to give them basically marching orders like the governor did with the setting board. We don't do that, especially if we want to maintain our credibility so that whatever the planning board and the zoning board and the building official comes up with by way of advisory opinion, it's going to be respected and not seen as if they're just following marching orders from the council. And we trust those board members to do the right thing, professional people.
So this is not a state law, this is a recommendation from
That's my legal
yourself, your legal opinion. Okay. So, and I'd just like to state for the record, since we're talking about it and you brought it up, I do not believe that taking a position on behalf of your townspeople would in any way compromise the recommendations from experts in the town one way or the other.
Most likely the council will. Not until we go through the process and hear everybody else.
Okay, fair enough, that's encouraging to hear. Okay, so lastly, having said all that, we would, and again, excuse me, I'm not up on the proper way to phrase this, and I heard everything you said. We would like to introduce a resolution to require both ongoing public transparency and direct non-council Burrillville citizen representation in tax treaty or pilot negotiations. Obviously, as a part of this, we the citizens of Burrillville would consider executive sessions and the sealing of said executive session records to be unacceptable.
And that's contrary to the state laws. You know what?
I'll make a motion to receive and file it.
Great. Is there a second?
Is there a second to that motion?
Yeah, sorry, we didn't move on yet.
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, no.
All right. Here's our issue here. I know you're supposedly, governed or bound by this state law, and we all know that law can be, twisted in certain ways or another, and that's what you guys are wrapping around right now. And maybe that's what you believe is in your legal right to do. Maybe there's a way to do something else. Here's our problem. We're talking about a $750 million project. It's probably the largest private development this state has ever seen. Not this town, this state. Maybe Providence Place Mall was close, I'm not sure, but other than that, $50 million for G-Tech, maybe $100 million for Amgen. We're talking a massive number here. And it's not that we don't trust you guys, is that there's a lot to consider, and especially with, the fact that we're negotiating with a multi-billion-dollar company. I know you guys didn't ask for this, it was dropped in your lap. I'm assuming that you guys found out about it, after you were elected the last time around. We need to figure out a way to get us involved some way, shape, or form. Because I'm really concerned, for one, I love this town, I want to stay in this town. But if this power plant goes in, I am going to leave this town. I'm not actually leaving this town, I'm leaving this state. Okay? And in order to do that, many of us are going to need to sell our homes. Now you guys are wrapping around the state law that you're going to negotiate in private. And I want to make sure that if this power plant goes in, those of us that are affected can get out of Dodge. Okay? We want to be able to get out of here and sell our properties. We want to make sure that our properties are protected. Okay? For those of us who live close nearby to that, within a couple of miles, it's proven fact that, these power plants, cause cancer. Right in their application, they've had to apply for a massive air pollution permit. We need to figure out a way to become a little more transparent in that. I'm asking, you guys to ask Oleg, we need to figure something out. We need to be transparent here because, again, we're not negotiating a tax treaty with a small business. By small, let's call it under 10 million. Again, we're talking about $750 million, and it's not even for a good business, in my opinion, and probably the majority of the town's opinion. It's not even a good business for this town. It's going to cause detriment on all levels to this town, from property values right to health. So we need to figure out a way to get us involved. And at a minimum, in your negotiations, in my opinion, you need, experts in different areas in the negotiation to figure out, you need a real estate, professional, at least one, if not two, maybe an appraiser, maybe a realtor, because their opinions generally differ a little bit. The environmentalists, like the Burrillville Land Trust, believe it or not, I believe they should be weighing in on these negotiations because, they, as well as other experts, can help, weigh in on, the cause of detriment to the community. We need to make sure we're looking at so many things. This is so massive. And again, it was dropped in your lap. We have to get us involved. You have to, at some degree, get us involved.
I would say, do you want this hung around your neck solely? I would get some more eyeballs on this if I were you. No, honestly, I'm sure you must feel that way. Starting to feel the heat, it's not going to die down.
It's only gonna get hot.
So, just the two of you guys, no one else?
Three of us.
Three of you, no one else?
Can we speak to the Ocean State Power deal? Can you revolve back to the state power deal? Some of the folks we had on board for that, when we work with Ocean State Power.
Sure, and we also do have an expert appraiser that's involved. So the negotiating team, in addition to myself and to Mr. Nicolishin and to Mike Wood, consisted of Glenn Walker, who's an appraiser with Sansucci and Associates, and Mr. Walker assisted us with the Ocean State Power litigation, which I handled for the town. And, I don't know if you know the resolution of Ocean State Power, but it was as good for the town as it could possibly have been. They were seeking the return of taxes in the amount of about $10 million. And when the 5 years of litigation was over, they got zero. We also entered into a tax agreement with them for Ocean State Power that is very favorable. Their appraisers were proposing approximately a value of about $80 million. Our appraisers came up with, over the years, between about $160 and $190 million, and we settled on a number that was $160 million. So you gave no money back to Ocean State Power, and you got a number that was almost the same as the number that Mr. Walker came up with. I don't think you could have gotten a better resolution from those 5 years of litigation. So the same team got together when this came about, and I was brought in and Mr. Walker was brought in. Mr. Walker has assisted in the negotiations of tax agreements all over New England. He has access to both public tax agreements and private negotiations in terms of where the dollars are. And I know there's a concern that maybe we left some dollars on the table. We can't get into the details of it right now, but I can tell you right now that Mr. Walker, through his knowledge of all the agreements throughout New England, was able to make sure we didn't leave dollars on the table. Now, we're going to be presenting the details of that to the council in executive session. I'm going to be getting direction from the council in executive session about where they would like me to go once I brief them on what we've done. But I haven't even briefed the council yet on what we've done. So I understand your questions. They're perfectly legitimate. I just think they're a little premature. Let us brief the council first, get direction from the council, and go from there.
September's gonna come really quick, boys and girls.
Okay, yeah, you mentioned that you did hire, Glenn Walker. He's an appraiser. But from what I'm gathering, and I know you were talking specifically to Ocean State Power, you're talking about an appraiser that's looking at the value of a power plant. For the sake of this argument, I don't really care about the value of a power plant. What I care about is the value of my home, and what the value that it appraised at this past December, and what I'm going to be able to sell it for come September, should this get approved. That's what our concern is. So you can see the little bit of a difference there. Again, if you can sell it. So that's another thing. So not only do we want to be protected, and again, let's work on getting us involved. Let's figure that out, because we can. We're smart people. I want to make sure that if we can sell our house, we're duly compensated for any loss of property value. And if we can't, I want to make sure that someone's going to be purchasing my property, be it Invenergy, be it as the town, and you can resell it as part of your tax agreement or something like that. But I want to make sure that I can sell my house and get out. And I believe that is a more than reasonable request. And I know it was mentioned in the past, I believe it was Mr. Wood who mentioned, well, we don't feel like the property's really, and I'm paraphrasing here, and if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. So Ocean State Power, what did the values do around there? When Ocean State Power was built, the internet didn't exist. So from now until the end of time, when somebody says, I want to go live on Wilson's Reservoir, wow, it's a beautiful lake. Wow, look at it, my neighbor's house is worth over $1 million. That person that's going to go look at a big $1 million, all right, great, Wilson's Reservoir, whoa, power plant, holy smokes. Forget it. These affluent people, they're really reasonably smart people as well as you guys. And I'm pretty sure that none of you would, if you had the means to purchase my neighbor's house, I know I don't, but if you did, you would look at it and be like, no, power plant, 3/4 of a mile away, no, I'm out of here. So we need some mechanism to allow us to get out of here. And that's why, not that we don't trust you, but this is not a $10 million factory. I know I'm being redundant. It's almost a $750 million project. We got to make sure that we're protected.
And these are the crazy sort of ideas that the townspeople are interested in talking to you guys about, because it affects us. So when we hear all negotiations are happening and all recommendations are happening in closed doors, we get a little worried, because there's a lot of ideas from the town that we would like to have considered as part of these negotiations. We think that's only fair. The company wants to come in, they want to take our water, they want to take our air. We should be compensated, for that.
Keep us up at night with the noise.
So this is the reason for us,
Can I put an answer to this by telling you that it is being considered, actually being negotiated? Without telling you what it is, what the negotiations are, but it's not being recorded.
But it's not. And what happens if we And there's a question I'm going to ask you for people. If we did not negotiate at all, we refuse to enter into any negotiations with them.
Those are the pros and cons that I spoke of earlier. And trust me, there's a few of them, many of them, not many of them. There's many pros and quite a bit of cons. And that's what we're prepared to discuss with the council tonight.
I'm pretty sure that the company coming in is aware of the pros and the cons as well. So I think if you divulge them, it won't ruin negotiations. But you know,
I'd like to differ. There are some things that are important to the town that they may not be aware of, and the other way around. We just don't want to discuss.
One thing not help.
Can I ask a question? And again, I'm new at this, I'm learning. When you negotiate an executive session and you decided what, your negotiations are and whatever, and before the paper is signed or however that works, are we gonna know before the ink is dry on the paper what you've negotiated for us? And let me just, one more, let me just follow up with that. And if we know, are we gonna be able to come to a meeting and say, well, we'd like to ask if we could get this, we'd like this, we'd like this? I mean, as they said, this is a big thing for us.
And I want you to know that we, as Mr. McElroy stated, as a team, are taking into account all of these concerns. It's not that we are not that stupid. We're taking that into consideration. We're working with whoever we possibly can, including having real estate agents review it for purposes, making sure that your interests are protected, not just yours, others as well.
Understood.
But something like this is not conducted by a committee where people get a chance to vote. There's no referendum for whether or not they don't enter into an agreement with the power plant. The law is written, so the council makes that decision. And the council, they're not being presented with anything today to make an agreement, to sign anything. We're just going to inform them of where we are and take guidance from them as to where they would like us to go. What else would they like? What terms would they like to change? And once we get there, it's the council's decision, ultimate decision. We're not going to have a referendum.
So like we couldn't submit something to you and say, look, these are some of the things that we're looking for.
Absolutely.
Is that possible? We can do that? Oh, okay. That answers my question.
how would we submit those?
Yeah.
What format? How and what format to whom?
Just submit it to the
Letter
clerk.
to the council.
Right.
Letter to the council, write a letter to the council, your concerns, and the things you'd like us to take into consideration.
So I just have one question. I'm Tracy Keegan, 44 West Road. So the council never passed a resolution to request that the solicitor, the assistant solicitor, and the town manager negotiate with Invenergy. If that's the case and you're doing your due diligence as you've said, can the council pass a resolution to ask you not to negotiate currently? And if the council did ask that, would you step back from the table?
I serve at the council's pleasure, and whatever council decides. We will present it to the council where we are right now with negotiation. And we will take guidance from it. So if they choose that the terms that we worked on so far are advantageous or disadvantageous, they'll tell us. They may tell us to do something else or do nothing at all. Yes, I have to do as the council.
So a council member right now could make a motion for the solicitor, the manager, and the assistant solicitor to step away from the table in regards to negotiating a tax agreement or a pilot program with Invenergy at this current time until the permit is approved by the EFSB.
That goes into this idea about pros and cons of having a tax agreement versus not having one. That's something that we're going to be discussing tonight.
Okay, but that's not the question. The question I'm asking you is, can one of these counselors ask... Correct. Can one of them make a motion to ask you to step away from the negotiation table at this current time obviously with a majority vote from the remaining counselors?
Yes.
Not on the agenda, you can't do it tonight.
But that's not what I'm just asking for a yes or a no, please.
And I will answer.
Okay.
This is going to be presented at the executive session. The council can do as it wishes at the executive session.
So you're saying in executive session, one of these council members can make a motion for you guys to step back from the table?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
So again, back to the credentials of those negotiating, you've talked about the agreement that you worked out previously, and that sounds great, thank you. What is your level of experience in negotiating a tax deal of this size? Is this average for you? Is this larger than any deal you've negotiated before? Number one. Number two, are you incented in any way to get the best deal or just a deal done, personally?
My direction is to act in the best interest of the town, to negotiate the best deal that we can for the town, and to present it to the town council for further direction, and that's what I've done. And this is absolutely not the first tax deal that I've negotiated. I mentioned earlier I negotiated the one that we're now operating under Coalition State Power, and I've negotiated quite a few others. I've never negotiated one this size, but they've all been multi-million-dollar tax deals.
How close to one this size?
I don't know for sure. I have done a number of 20-year deals, and the numbers add up over 20 years, but I don't have it at my fingertips. I can tell you that they're all large deals, but not as large as this.
So do you see why we're concerned? We know it's a big deal. We know it's up beyond what we typically deal with here out in beautiful Burrillville. And I, again, would make the recommendation that we bring in, not that you are not, but that we bring in the biggest heavy hitters, that we include public transparency, that we include real estate experts, and that we include provisions, which we will submit. Thank you, David. We will submit the provisions that we would like to be considered and included. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else I can submit?
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate the dealing with the peppering of our questions. We know it's tough, but this is important.
It is important, and everybody's been respectful. I can't appreciate it. I can't thank you all enough. This is civil discourse at its finest. Absolutely. Thank you.
My name is Kathy Sherman. I live on Walnut Lake Road. I just have one quick question regarding the pilot. I understand there are benefits for negotiating at the proper time. I appreciate that you're advising the council of where you stand, but I'd like the attorneys, Mr. McElroy, nice seeing you again, to consider the questions that you asked with regard to your first set of data. Question 119, says, please explain how Invenergy plans to deal with the impact of the diminished property values in the neighborhood. Their response was, Invenergy does not believe that there will be any diminishment of property values, and in order to stand behind that statement, Invenergy is prepared to offer abutters a property value protection agreement that will provide protection against diminished value if it were to occur. So I just want to point out a couple of things. First of all, in your question, you didn't say you believe there may be a diminished property value. You didn't say the potential property value. You said the impact of diminished property value. You acknowledged that there would be diminished property values. So first of all, thank you for that. Invenergy's response was a belief. We all know these questions have to be answered under oath. They can't lie. But a belief is just a belief. David Duke has his, Invenergy has theirs. So their belief doesn't hold any water with us, and I'm asking that it not hold any water with you. In addition, they're saying that they're looking to offer abutters, which have never been defined, a property value protection agreement, which I believe that would be negotiated here at the council. And what that, according to what I've heard, as you know, I'm an intervener, I have an attorney, my understanding of what that agreement will be is that our houses will be appraised. If they don't sell at that value, Invenergy will make up the difference. That is not acceptable. The truth of the matter is, if we have to live through some of the things that their words, not ours, the trucks that are going to be running between 2 a.m. and 4 p.m., the noise, the disruption. Again, I've been before this council about Algonquin. I've talked about the private nuisance claim that can be filed. We should be compensated for that. If you don't have a say, and I know that the siting board has the full authority, and if this plant is built, then I'm requesting that you negotiate the absolute best agreement. You know I have an attorney, you know he can negotiate for me. He can only negotiate for me, not my neighbors. That's not fair. We all live in the same neighborhood for years, and all I'm asking, you got the question right. You acknowledged that there will be diminished property values. You can ask some excellent questions. But to this question, their belief, you need to press them on them. Because what are they basing their belief on? They have to have some facts. They've never built a power plant of this magnitude, according to them. So what are they basing this belief on that there won't be? Their ammonia, they say, is going to be 4,000, whatever it is, 19%, 1% less than the EPA standard that's going to require them to have the proper storage. Well, that's a selling point for my house. The noise from Algonquin, you know it's over the EPA standard. I can't wait to hear the experts tomorrow, and I thank you for giving us the opportunity to come and hear the noise experts. Because noise on top of noise only adds more noise. You wrote in your memo to us that they don't have to adhere to the 43 decimals. They have words in some of the answers that although achieving the broadband portion of code 43 decimals was feasible with extensive controls, including placing the combustion turbines within building, attaining the unusually restrictive octane band limit was found to require extraordinary mitigation measures. But we have to live there because a house doesn't sell. And when does this deal start? I want it to start the day of the permit. I want to be able to sell my house and be out of there. I do not want to be inconvenienced any longer. I have been inconvenienced by Algonquin. And the majority of you know it, because the majority of you have taken me up on my offer and come to listen. And it hasn't gotten better, and it's only going to get worse. So if you're going to, and I know you're not going to put it here, but if the siting board authorizes this to go through, these definitions need to be defined. It shouldn't just be me and a couple of us that live directly across the street. Who are these abutters, and what are we going to get for that? I want to be able to move, and I want them to buy the house if I can't sell it. Making up the value only assumes I can sell it. So what their proposal is if my house is worth $250,000 and I sell it for $100,000, they'll give me $150,000. Well, if I can find a fool to buy it at $100,000, but I have to live there in the meantime. I have to put up with the disruption, the inconvenience, the loss of enjoyment. You know what the lawsuits are going to be? You know, there's several of us now talking about that. Getting an attorney to file a nuisance claim. Getting injunctive relief. So what I'm asking when you negotiate, I am familiar with negotiation. When you negotiate, let them know that you're not going to just roll over. That you need to say no to certain things. That you need to stand up for us. And I know you will. You're asking good questions. You see the issues. You know, to answer 145 pages about what the noise level will be, I appreciate what you're doing, I appreciate the questions, and I look forward to some resolution with regard to a little transparency in the negotiations. Thank you.
And I apologize, Jason Ecosse, and I forgot one thing because I desperately had to use the restroom for a period of time. TMI. So you've shared a lot of information, you've had back and forth with us today. You can see there's a lot of distrust in the town. You know, you're trying to give some level of information around that. This is a big deal. We know that there are playbooks that are operated on by companies like this to get these things passed in other towns and communities. I may not surprise you to know that other towns and communities are reaching out to us here in Burrillville, warning us about those, and we see some of the same dominoes start to fall, one right after another. So rather than put us in adversarial positions against each other and to give our town some additional trust, I would recommend that you consider as a council what sort of grand gesture you could make to the community that would convince us that you are in fact acting on our best interest, that you are aware that the town does not want this, and that you are going to consider all the things that we've asked about as it relates to a tax treaty. I don't have an idea about what that grand gesture could be, but I'm sure you could come up with something in the idea of transparency. So I would implore you to do that. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Jeremy Bailey, Wall Lake Road. One more question. In regards to the tax treaty, how you said, you know, state law says, you know, it can be held from the public. Are you required to keep it from the public, or does the state law just allow you to keep it from the public?
It allows us, it would be foolish if we discussed negotiations in public, so that the other side knows what we're worried about, what we're willing to give up.
Okay.
We can't negotiate.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear that the state law is not prohibiting you from involving us, or even a small subcommittee of people. What it's doing is it's just allowing you to do it. It's not forcing you to do it, it's allowing you.
That's correct.
Thank you.